My connections in Krishna consciousness began, of course, by the mercy of the devotees. And I lived in Brisbane, and some devotees had started a temple in Brisbane. I think Gopinatha had started the first temple, and it was in a suburb called Auchenflower or Milton. And subsequently to that, they moved to a place in Mary Street in Brisbane itself. I had a sister who I kind of looked up to as an older sister who was a bit alternative. She was into India and incense and Gandhi and all that kind of stuff, right? So one day she said to me, I'm going to visit the Hare Krishna temple for the Sunday feast. And I said, can I come? I wanted to be into what she was into, you know. She said, sure. So we lived in the suburbs, and we took a train around about midday, because the trains only run every 2 or 3 hours to Brisbane. We sat up in the library, which is some national library, something in Brisbane, and it was just at the top end of Mary Street, pretty much, you know. And we're waiting there, and she says, and she says, oh, they say you can hear the kirtan from, you know, blocks away. It was all really mystical, you know. Anyway, come time, we decided, you know, we better go down there. So we walked down the street, right, and the kirtan was already happening. And Mary Street was a 2-story place, and it was like a shop front down the bottom with a big plate glass window, and you could actually see in the temple room. And she went inside, but I was really shy. I just stood outside for a while, and eventually when they were bowing down after the kirtan, then I sneaked inside and sat down with my back against the plate glass window and my legs stretched out, right? And Prabhu was the president at that particular time, and during the lecture he quite sharply brought me up, chastised me for having my legs stretched out like that. I thought, that's a bit rude, you know, for a newcomer, but anyway, it shocked me. And I remember so many things about the very first day going to the temple. It was like a whole new world opened up, a whole new consciousness, everything, you know. So I was thinking, I spoke to devotees, and I remember speaking with Kainaram, and he was a brahmachari. We had this buffet style, smorgasbord style serving up for the Sunday feast, and I remember there were Simply Wonderfuls, papadums, there was a salad, would have been a sabji, probably a cordial drink or something like that. And we sat down, myself and my sister, we just went over to one part of the room, and
you want to get a lift? Okay.
And then all of a sudden this brahmachari sat down next to us and started to preach, you might like to say, to my sister. I didn't know I was preaching. I actually thought they knew each other. Later on I said, do you know him from somewhere? No, I've never seen him before. Anyway, sat down and started preaching to us. And we sat down next to this little coffee table, right? Had a tablecloth over it. And after a few minutes into the conversation, he kind of pulled out this plate of Simply Wonderfuls, big plate of Simply Wonderfuls, and he went red and he said, oh, we don't get to eat these very often. And anyway, we spoke a bit about the philosophy, and I thought, this is really fantastic, you know. Then during the week I went around to the temple again, and thought to buy some books, and I spent all the money that I had. I had a job for a little while at a soft drink bottling factory, a shift work in the middle of the night, only because I was curious. My neighbour was doing it, and I thought, what's that taste? What's he getting out of it, you know? And I wasn't really into the money, but I just want to know what it was like to work, right? So this was on a vacancy during holidays for Queensland Institute of Technology, which was actually only a couple of blocks away from the temple anyway. So I went around there with about $20 or $30, big money in those days. That's a week's wage. And so I just started looking at the books. I was setting up bookshelves, and they had all the books in there. And I said, what's that book about? Oh, that's the Nectar Devotion. It's about so-and-so, so-and-so. I said, okay, I'll have one of those. And what's that book about? Oh, yeah, okay, I'll have one of those. Then I saw these japa beads. Well, I didn't know they were japa beads. It's strands of beads, hanging on the wall. And I said, what are they? And they said, oh, actually it was Charu, the temple president, was sort of doing all this, right? I think, anyway. And he said, oh, they're beads that, we chant Hare Krishna on. Okay, I'll have a set of those. And then he sat myself and my sister down at the table, and we all chanted around together. And he said, yeah, we do 16 of those every day. Okay. And from that day on, by mercy of the devotees, I've pretty much kept up with the 16 rounds a day, right? Then it was ascertained that Srila Prabhupada, well, put it this way, that was such an ecstatic experience that I sort of thought, I'm not going to the feast next week. I'm going to hold back for a while. And, and then I'll go the week after, which I regretted, of course, but it's some kind of weird thing that I had that I'll enjoy it more if I, save up or don't go every day, So, but then after the next week I went there, I figured after hearing the philosophy, especially this bit here, they were telling me, we follow these principles like no illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling, no meat eating. I thought, wow, that's kind of attractive. That, I was always trying to be a vegetarian, and I never was successful in trying to woo, a woman. I was only a kid anyway, but it was all pretty scary to me, and household life and, all that kind of stuff. I thought, this is for me, this is for me. So I kind of made that conscious decision, I want to join this movement. So Srila Prabhupada was due to come to Australia early, this is probably around November 1972. And meanwhile, my sister actually joined the temple. And she was a unique sort of a person. She was a real tomboy type woman. And she wanted to be like a sannyasini. And she dressed really haphazardly. Well, not really. She wasn't dressed to attract men, She wasn't interested in that at all. She'd get in the kirtan with a pair of wampus and really ham it up, And even I was sort of, kind of like, I wasn't ashamed of her in a sense, but I just, like, people have a conception about young women, the way they dress and all that kind of stuff. And I could see some of the other brahmacharis were thinking maybe she's a bit too different or something like that. But anyway, so Srila Prabhupada was destined to arrive in Australia for a visit, and it was subsequently decided he wouldn't visit Brisbane. So all the devotees decided we'll just close up the temple and we'll head down to Sydney. So I hitchhiked with my sister. We got picked up early in the morning by some kind of ecstasy crew, kind of like devotees didn't really live in the temple, so they just picked us up from our parents' house in the suburbs and dropped us out on the highway. And to hitchhike down took us 3 days. First and last time, but anyway, not really the last time, but we didn't really know where we were going. We didn't even have the address. We got to Sydney Harbour Bridge and we were walking over the bridge, and we just stopped a few taxi drivers, and by Krishna's grace one of them knew where the Hare Krishna temple was, right in the middle of Sydney, out of such a big city, how many taxi drivers would know where the Hare Krishna temple was, right? So we got dropped off there, and Mataji Chamari, she was preaching to us for a few hours in the afternoon, and so it was time to take rest. So trying to rough it, I just spread out a few blankets on the backyard. It was a big yard. There was horse stables up the back because it was near Wentworth Park or something, some racing track, right? And you could hear them going on at night or during the day, Saturday, I guess. So I just crashed out in the middle of the lawn, and in the morning I was hearing these people rushing past, and they didn't know who I was. It was just some blob under the blanket, and they said, "Hey Prabhu, time to get up for Mangalati." Nobody told me about it, right? And I was thinking, I don't know, but I'm a new person, maybe I shouldn't have to go. But everyone kept harassing me as they came past. There was no chance of sleeping any further, I can tell you that now. So I got up, and I could see the brahmacharis had taken bath in some kind of basic situation there with that hose, and so I guess I took a bath, but I wasn't really very organised. I hadn't even brought a towel with me, right? So I looked on the line and there was a towel just hanging on the line. I thought I'd use that, right? But when I looked at it, it was almost ripped into two pieces, right? So anyway, I dried myself and I went to get my clothes off the line, which I'd washed the previous night, and they were denim clothes, jeans and a Wrangler shirt. And they were sopping wet because it was February and it was a dewy night. Thought, oh no. So I thought, oh well, I'll just go in a towel. So I wrapped a towel around me, and I arranged it in such a way it was the most decent sort of, way I could do it. And the rip was just right up the thigh, right? So I went to Mangalartik, and I was totally bewildered. I didn't even notice the deities the whole time. Sri Sri Radha Gopinatha, right? Didn't even notice. I was just looking around at the devotees. Sangzana, Davana, and even devotees that even... I remember Hari Sori, he was reading from the songbook, and he looked my way and gave me a pretty weird sort of look, and then Karma gave me a bit of a disdainful look from somewhere else. But anyway, look, I wanted to make a point that somehow or another, by the devotees' mercy, they made me get up for Mangalartik, right? I got thrown in the deep water, so to speak, and despite not being dressed for the occasion, I think the deities might have appreciated it.